Welcome! My name is Eileen Trout, and I am a student at the University of Heidelberg in Heidelberg, Germany. I am making this podcast for the seminar Food and the Urban Spaces, taught by Professor Dr. Roos Gerritsen. The two questions I would like to discuss today are, first, whether eating with hands can alter the taste of food, and second, if biases are able to be created from eating with hands. I have interviewed students from all over the world, and they all study different subjects here. Surprisingly, they have similar answers in the respect to food and eating with hands. I believe the similarity is the aftermath of a growing Western lifestyle, which includes mannerly-like actions such as not using hands, but instead cutlery, and trying to stay as clean as possible while eating. I believe that the taste of food can be different every time someone eats. For instance, the ripeness of the produce, the quality of the ingredients, if it was cooked for the right amount of time, all these factors come into play in terms of taste before one even eats their meal. I began my interviews with the question, what kinds of foods my interviewees saw themselves eating where they used their hands over silverware. Most associated eating with their hands as a form of fast eating, not necessarily fast food, but food that one can eat quick. Examples given were fruit, sandwiches, fries, ice cream, and other finger food-like items. None had explained that they used their hands to eat non-finger food-like items. I followed by asking why they chose to use cutlery. Some responses consisted that they wanted to keep their hands clean, and forks and knives allowed that. Others didn't want to have to wash their hands before every time they ate. One answer that really stuck with me was that my interviewee's parents had explained to her that it wasn't mannerly to eat with their hands. This got me thinking about who gets to decide what is mannerly and what is not. In Mixing Methods Tasting Fingers, one of the authors, I believe Malini Sir, explains that there are rules behind eating with fingers and that one can't just eat with no regard for rules. Her explanation from the text is as follows. Where I come from, this is not considered graceful. Fingers dropping food from the mouth, food moving beyond the proximal metatarsal joints, fingers moving food outside the plate, fingers joining in a fist so as to put food into the mouth. Teaching the fingering of food goes hand in hand with disciplining the eater. End quote. This difference in tradition causes negative impacts. For example, what some people consider ill-mannered, others consider mannerly. And with the ever-growing Western ideology, people create biases toward anyone who goes against the Western way of life, resulting in images of people or groups being labeled something negative when in reality, said image was developed from incorrect information. Leaving now the negative image to mislabel a group of people or a way of life. An example is from a New York Times article, Mind Your Manners, Eat With Your Hands by Sarah DeGregor, explaining how Indian restaurants in large cities like New York and London discourage people into not eating with their hands as if the restaurant owners were embarrassed by the eating with a hand aspect of their cuisine. An insecurity which, in my opinion, was developed from Western ideas about what table etiquette should be. The question that followed was about the taste being affected when one ate with their hands. My interviewees all concluded that the cleanliness of the hands was the only way that taste could be affected. Their association that they would eat with the same hand that handles their bowel movements didn't seem to be appealing. This issue is a common concern amongst many societies where eating with hands is a common practice. A few areas where it is common are the Middle East, much of Africa, and parts of Asia. Each place has their own rules in terms of finger etiquette. Hand washing is typically the first step, but it differentiates on whether the restaurant has finger bowls present that allow you to wash your hands at the table, or whether one must go to the bathroom. Religions also influence the etiquette. While in Muslim communities, one must first say a prayer of thanks after washing their hands, and then they are only allowed to begin eating with their right hand. This allowance of the right hand only is also a common practice in some parts of India. The reason behind this is to separate your hands in the tasks they do. One must keep their right hand clean, so to speak, and do all dirty acts with their left hand. Dirty acts mostly consist of bowel movements and possible jobs that require the hand to be tainted. When I explained to them the theory of food tasting better when one ate with their hands, they were in disbelief. One person even explained that they thought this theory may be a result from a placebo effect. For those who are unaware what a placebo effect is, according to the study, The Importance of Placebo Effects in Pain Treatment and Research, it is most commonly known in the medical field as a substance or treatment that has non-specific effects on the body, but the person receiving the treatment doesn't know that they are actually not receiving treatment and therefore can get better through their mind. It doesn't always work on people, but it has shown successful results in terms of pain in the body. In this case, however, my interviewee argued that because one person ate something tasty with their hands once before, they might have associated that good flavor with eating with their hands, and therefore whenever they ate with their hands again, they mentally had some sort of enhancement of the flavor, when in reality it could have tasted the same as to someone who used cutlery. This was a complete opposite argument from that of mixing methods and the New York Times article. The mixing methods authors believed that when fingers were used to eat, there was no distance between the food and the one eating, and this lack of distance created a better taste in the end. While the New York Times article interviewed chefs that explained, when eating with hands, there is conviction and passion that you don't get when you use a fork. Although some would argue that passion can still be present even with the use of cutlery. This brings us to my next point I'd like to go into, the eroticism behind food, and how that has an effect in taste. My interviewees were all caught off guard by the asking of this question. Being able to only think of examples and how food could be erotic, every first example was someone eating a banana. One person was explaining to me how when she was in high school, she had to stop bringing bananas as a snack due to the uncomfortable comments said by the 15-year-old boys. This uncomfortable feeling they all experienced brought up a question I'm not sure how to go about, but I thought it was important to mention, and said question is, why should one feel uncomfortable with the topic of eroticism in any form of discussion? Not necessarily focused on food, but what is so upsetting about this topic where one can't find comfort in talking about it? The only solution I can think of was that this particular issue deals with people who have grown up with Western ideals. This uncomfortableness is not common with everyone in the world, and we are the way we are due to our upbringing. And someone once decided that the body's natural pleasures should not be talked about, and therefore that's why people in this century don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about what goes on behind closed doors. There are also exceptions in people who do feel comfortable discussing such matters, but very few in my opinion. I have such an opinion because I am one who doesn't feel uncomfortable, and when the subject comes to topic, I receive many shocked faces that don't want to go into such a discussion. Now, focusing back on my point of taste being affected due to eroticism, amongst the people I interviewed was a couple, and the girlfriend was explaining how she finds it erotic when she watches her boyfriend eat something and he has so much passion from the taste that it actually sexually arouses her. Now, this, of course, is a personal trait. Not everyone feels this way, but she explained that it made her look at what was eaten differently. The taste wasn't necessarily changed, but the image she had of the food had been changed. As brought up in mixing methods, the taste may be good, but sensuous contact from mouth to fingers can blind the taste due to an array of different sensations. In conclusion, I believe eating with hands does affect the taste. I feel this way because having eaten with my hands in many different food forms, I do feel a connection to the food. Experiencing texture, temperature, and taste It creates a whole new experience. Even when I finish my meal and start to lick my fingers clean, the process behind this is fun and somehow the taste is stronger. This probably is an aftermath of residue from the food building up on my fingers while I ate. People agree with this belief and others disagree. That's how our world works. Adding on to my findings in terms of biases, they are too easily created without the proper knowledge to support them. In return, this may harm anyone even when it is not even accurate. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope you leave today with a more open interpretation towards food and how we consume it.